Welcome to the Empowered to Connect podcast, where we come together to discuss a healing-centered approach to engagement and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. I'm JD Wilson, and I am your host. And today on the show, we're going to talk with MO and Tona Ottinger about how to advocate for your kids with your family and friends. This is something that if you are walking this connected parenting journey, can prove to be pretty difficult. At times, you're beginning to transition in how you respond to your kids, how you interact with them. All those different things are coming into play. You've got friends around you, or you got family around, and they're noticing the differences. And how do you make sure that you're still maintaining a safe place for your kids and advocating for them in a way that's going to preserve and build the relationships there? How do you know when to cut ties with certain friends or build new friendships with others? We'll talk about all that today, and just a really practical and I think needed conversation that we have not had here before on the podcast, at least. And so we've had variations of it. We've touched on different elements of this, but not in the way that we're going to today. So excited to hear Mo and Tona here in just a few minutes. Also, just another announcement I want to share with you guys. We have an exciting update thanks to a grant from the Cigna Foundation. We are currently testing a brand new parent coaching program called Equip Parent Coaching. So listen, the deal with this is we're testing this program with a very small number of parents, and so we have 15 spots left for our beta test group. If you're familiar with research and with all of these things, the beta group is going to provide some survey data to our research team, and that'll help us to evaluate the program effectiveness as we finalize the program. Equip is a 10-week program. It takes parents through ETC's 9 connecting practices with a coach who can apply these principles directly to your family. It's an hour and a half a week meeting online with the coach. The cost of the program is $600, but for our podcast listeners, we've got a 25% discount, bringing your total to $450 for 10 weeks of one-on-one coaching. Obviously, that is not a small investment, but less than many of us pay for gym memberships, personal training, life coaching, therapy. It's a great investment into your family's well-being, and it comes out to be about $45 an hour or an hour and a half session with your coach. And so if you are interested in signing up for this beta test group, again, there's only 15 spots available. And so we want to make sure to communicate that ahead of time. If there is too much of a demand for that, what we will do is know that once that beta test is over, we will circle back to open up the public sign-up groups when they are ready. So if you want to be one of those 15 people, how do you sign up? Email equip@empoweredtoconnect.org to let us know that you're interested, and mention the podcast, mention the ETC podcast for 25% off of the coach, Equip Parent Coaching costs. So make sure your email today. There are only 15 spots available. I hope I've said that enough times so you know there are 15 spots available. So if you're interested in being that number, jump in, equip@empoweredtoconnect.org. Let us know that you heard about on the podcast. Lastly, something that I cannot say publicly, but that you should go to our website to find out. Find the link in our show notes for an event that we are having in Memphis, Tennessee, that, let me just say, you don't want to miss. You shouldn't miss for any circumstances. So I can't announce it publicly for reasons that will be clear down the road. But if you love us, and if you are interested in an event that we would talk about in this way, where it is kind of a top secret event that we are letting you know about, that we can't share the specifics publicly on the podcast, head to our website. You can head to the link that is in our bio. You'll know what I mean when you see it, and check out information on this event that's coming up November 12th in Memphis, Tennessee. It is a limited space event as well, but one that we are confident is going to be an absolute game-changing night. It will be a night of entertainment. It'll be a night that is well worth your investment in every possible way. So without giving anything else away and getting myself in trouble, I will say go to that link, check it out, and we hope to see you November 12th in Memphis, Tennessee. That's all for our introduction. Now we finally get to the conversation with Mo and Tona Ottinger about how to advocate for your kids with your friends and family. Well, as we said in the opening, it's Mo and Tona Ottinger and myself, and we're going to talk about something along the same lines of this advocacy piece that we've talked about with our kids in school, but this time more in the context of friends and family. And so I know, you guys have been on with us and Jesse to talk about preparing your family for your family and that kind of idea. We have not yet really waded into this idea of like, how do we do this with our friends, especially if you are new to this parenting journey and you've had established friendships that now all of a sudden you might have to do things in a different way. And my last disclaimer that I will give is there is a cold burning through our house. My voice is going to sound a little bit different, whatever today. Just forgive that, if I have to cough or something, we'll edit it out. So there's that. So guys, why don't we start with this? I think, Tana, do you want to kind of frame this conversation for people, like if they're just jumping into this connected parenting world and they're like, kids take a backseat to adults, like kids should be seen and not heard, like that whole philosophy. How do we need to reframe this conversation for the way that we would view parenting?
That's a big question, JD. It's funny because the first thing I wanted to say was like, if you're struggling to advocate for your kids with friends, just get some new friends. But like, I know it's easier said than done. But I was thinking about that because Mo and I first of all, we haven't been on the podcast together in a while. And JD, I haven't been on with you in a while. So when it came time to like advocate, for your kids with family and friends, I started thinking like, well, we became friends. Like there is a sense of figuring out kind of who your people are, which you can't always do that with family. So I do think that these conversations there's a couple different ways to think about how do we advocate with our family and what does that look like? And then how do we advocate with our friends? Because we do have some ability to choose in some settings who we spend time with. We're going to be in settings and in peer groups with different kinds of people outside of our control all the time. But I think the most important thing, and I think this will run through from the beginning of end, no matter where this particular conversation takes us, is we always want to be thinking about like our children are the priority. And as parents, our first and most important priority is to make sure that they are in spaces and places that are not just physically safe, but are emotionally safe for them. Yeah. And how we show up in those places and spaces, we need to be emotionally safe for them. So advocating, whatever that might look like in whatever setting, the ultimate goal of that still to me is the relationship between me and my kiddo. Yeah. So how we navigate the spaces, that's the center. That's the center hallmark. And you kind of said like adults come first, kids come to the back seat. Like that was a massive shift that Mo and I had to make. And it probably was over time. And I don't think we even knew we were doing it, but we really have shifted the way, like starting to see our children as humans that deserve respect and advocacy and honor and like flipping that script a little bit.
Well, and just over time, you begin to realize who in your sphere is safe and who's not safe. And so, that's hard too, because not hard in the sense of, man, if you're not going to be good for my kid, then move on. And so but that is a relational break or distance, or which is hard, but ultimately knowing what's best for my kid was not hard. But when you begin to think through who is emotionally safe for my child, that is something that it's like, that is something I do every day. Yeah. Whether we're walking into a school, whether we're walking into a faith community, whether we're walking into a birthday party, like it is what people around me can be a safe person for my child, not just physically, but emotionally. And And then, and that's led to some hard decisions too, of like, well, there was a season we were really close with this, and maybe not so much anymore. So, those are some of the realities of navigating, but it is something I'm always doing for my kiddos.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, that ton of what you say, kind of get new friends or refine old friendships. And that's, I'm paraphrasing, but that idea is really important because there's a tendency in some of us, and I'm this way, to want to just be like, oh, we just don't have to hang out anymore. Like I can be friends with you, or I can see you on the side, then I can make up excuses for us to not hang out other times. But
then I'm 52 now. I'm 52, JD. I'm too tired for. I just moved.
Yeah.
So I was like, I ain't got no time for no
time or energy. No, I'm joking.
That might be the age of me coming out that I'm kind of like,
no. But we didn't start that. We did not start our parenting journey there, hon. We were young and we had so many peers. So, okay, JD. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that if I think, if I pause and I think from like a big picture standpoint, if we have friends, people that we consider friends, we do kind of owe it to them to share what has become a very important part of our parenting and the reasoning behind it and all that. And so I think for a lot of different facets of life, this happens seamlessly. And this process of like kind of the weeding out of friends happens seamlessly. Like you make new life decisions or change schools, or you change churches, or you change jobs, or change whatever, and your regular patterns change a little bit, and some friendships stick and endure and keep rolling, and some do not. And we have lots of friends that don't see eye to eye with us on parenting, but deeply respect the way that we're committed to the parenting. So I think that would bring up my first thought with this is that when you're trying to parent in a way that is attachment focused and connected relationship with your kids, there are going to be moments, and I brought up children are to be seen and not heard, because there's that moment you are talking to another adult and a kid comes up and interrupts you, and is interrupting okay? Well, no, in an ideal world, we would like to teach them to like how to approach us and how to engage in that conversation, but it's going to happen, or a meltdown might happen while you're talking to somebody else. And the cultural norm, or at least it used to be, and maybe it's shifting, but the cultural norm used to be like, I am talking to an adult. Do you see me? Please stop. Like, and be like, I'm so sorry. He's so rude right now and falling apart in front of you. And that was 100% the way that, and how I want to pin it on my parents, like it's like it was their, intention to do that. But that was just sort of the way that things were happening. And, when I was growing up, and it was the way that I defaulted to parenting starting out. And I noticed myself, or I would have my wife, who was going to be with us, but she's not feeling well today either. She would point out for me, hey, it looks like you're embarrassed of your kids and you're embarrassed of your kids having needs. And we need to not be that way. And so I think we got to be really careful with new friendships and existing ones, when we are starting to parent, to make sure we are not showing embarrassment of our kids, especially to our kids, but then to our friends as well. Like, and to kind of almost model like a new norm of, hey, this is how we engage now. And to say, hey, excuse me for just a second, and go take care of your kids' needs, figure out what they need. It might be that you're leaving. Like, we left a function the other night earlier than we had planned. And I'm old enough now that I didn't feel the need to go back in and give all the formal goodbyes. Like, I was just kind of like, yeah, we're out of here. We're done. So I think doing that without embarrassment, and then being able to come back, and if there's an explanation needed to this friend, to do that in a manner that is, again, not embarrassed of the kid, not over dramatic, or not, oh gosh, guys, I'm sorry. Listen, this normally they're not like that, but this, none of that. Just like, hey, sorry about that, y'all. It's just, this is an overwhelming environment and need to make sure that they felt taken care of, or whatever. And the model, like, this is how we engage with our kids now. And hopefully that establishes new norms that when they're consistent, your friends just adjust to, or you get new friends.
I like that, JD, because what I feel like I hear you say is that advocacy in the moment. I mean, Mo and I we were being a bit snarky, because I do think what's probably happened to us over time is, as we started making some of those shifts, friendships did wane, because they just weren't down for that. But I think the important thing is, what you just said, which is the very in the moment. So there's this like in the moment advocacy. You're with family, you're with friends, something's happening. How are you going to support your child and advocate for their needs in the moment, in the presence of family and friends? Like that's a very, very real thing that all of us have experienced at one time or another if you've been parenting more than 5 minutes. And I think the heart of the matter is you said you were setting new norms, especially if you're shifting your parenting. You're setting a new way of interacting, a new way of being, unapologetically so. You're saying, hey, between me and my kid, their needs matter more than this 5-minute chit chat we're having about football or whatever it is we're shooting the breeze about. The kiddo needs me and I'm responsive. And not everybody is going to be down for that. And like, that's okay, right?
Yeah, and I feel the need to say, that's not easy to do.
No.
That's not a natural reaction to have either. To
That's
be,
right.
a kid melts down in front of you and maybe in front of people you don't know yet. And you're like,
Hold on. Excuse me, please.
sorry about this. One moment. Let me get
That's right. That's right.
Like,
Yeah.
inside, you're just like the Dwight from The Office moment where he screams in the camera. He's like, ah! Like that's how I feel inside sometimes those moments. But I think now I've gotten in long enough down the road to know either I act like an idiot and then I make it right and kind of go back to repair with my kid, or I'm able to separate out, go take care of that need, help them feel more connected. And then we're both back in a better place because I'm proud of how I handled it and they feel safe again. They've got what they need to keep on rolling. And then you go back to that conversation about usually something that is very inconsequential in life.
Right. And what I think is true is in those moments, those real life moments, you are going to start seeing who is safe for you.
Yeah.
Those friendships will show themselves to be safe places for you to land in parenting this way, or you're going to realize like they're not down for that. And then you get to decide a boundary, or you get to decide how to navigate through your social spheres. And you're looking for the person, right, that's welcomes you back unequivocally and asks if they're doing okay and if you need or they need anything. Like that's the ideal, right?
And I'll just jump in here again, like those are the sweetness, those are the relationships that are the sweetest for us that have been around. And I'll just say, as there have been those that have not been down for that. And and that is like, I won't even say what I say privately in those regards. For someone to say, I'm not really down for that and what's going on with your kid. I'm like, that one, I'm Tona knows how I feel there. It's just like, but the sweetness of relationships for those that have said, man, I'm in this with you, with your kiddos, and I want to know your kid. And they're not vocalizing this, but for the people that have like, I want to be emotionally safe for my kid. I see your kid and we love you and care enough about you guys and your kids. Like this is what real life and real friendship is about. And having those that can carry that for you, carry that with you, and you do vice versa with them. Like the reality is that's what all of us want. We want emotionally safe friends for ourselves and for our kiddos. And so, and what that means is at times educating and sharing and kind of just being honest and vulnerable and kind of bringing friends along. But that's the case with they're having to do that with us too, like as we get to know friends and families and their rhythms and how they do things and all of that, like that is the beauty and the messy and all the things of friendship and life. And so, I think that's what we all long for.
Mm-hmm.
When we're thinking about sort of that advocacy piece, both with family and friends, I think one of the through lines I'm hearing from us is, is the person safe? And I think to me, that's more important than are they fully educated? Do they understand? Do they have the skills to help in this moment? Maybe not. So, Mo, I'm thinking about just some of our family and some of our friends' families that maybe didn't totally understand what was going on, but they took a posture of curiosity and concern and love and teachability. So their motivations were open. They were open to learning. They maybe just didn't have the skills yet to come in and help. That's something entirely different, because we need community. And sometimes, unfortunately, there was the responsibility to what you said is to educate and help them understand or co-labor in some skill building together, figure some strategies out. Those things take energy. We don't typically do that in front of the children. So that's what I was making that differentiation earlier. There's a way to advocate for your kids when your children are in the room. And then there are places and spaces with family and friends that want to be in it with you, that maybe there is a need to educate or explain some things, or not overly share, but hey, this is why this is happening. This is typically what's going on. This is why I did what I did. I do remember one time, it was many, many years ago, and it was somebody in our family, and maybe we had been on vacation with them or something. I don't remember the exact details, but I sent a reflection text that was very long. And I think I just did a little bit of peeking behind the covers, helping them see what was going on beneath the surface and what was happening with some of the kids on that trip, what all was going on with them, what all was going on with us, and why we did what we did. And I remember their text back was, "Thank you so much for taking time to send this. That is so helpful. Knowing that really helps me understand."
Yeah.
And if I remember, Mo, I don't think we felt great during the moments, but I was making some assumptions that they love us and they love our kids. So if I can help them along because they seem to be willing, then what we want, all of us want people on our kids' team. We all want people who love our children. The more of those adults in the world, the better, right? So we don't need to take a all you're out of here approach to every grown up that doesn't get it, or we're alone on an island. So having a little bit of energy to bring those loving, curious, kind people along the journey is how you build your kids' team, if you will. So unfortunately, I do think some of that responsibility falls on us. But I'm going to say one more thing. I don't think, Mo, let's just really be vulnerable. We have an unbelievably supportive group of humans in Memphis, Tennessee around our family.
Yes.
That was not always the case. And out of our own loneliness and need, we started building into people. And I believe those people built right back into us and built into others. I believe that there was a spark that caught fire. And if we hadn't done that, if we would have just been nobody gets us,
Totally.
put ourselves on an island, put no energy into those relationships, I just don't think we would have what we even have right now. So there's some really beautiful about you in trying to dig deep enough to let others in. And it's scary.
Yeah.
True.
That's what you got. I was yep, that's right.
Well, I'm just as I was listening to you, I'm yeah, absolutely. It's almost what you pour in, what you pour into others, they pour back into you. There is that belief. But I was thinking the whole time, I was good grief, 5 minutes ago, I was man, I'm too tired. I want to cut everything.
We are tired. It's okay. It's got to be honest. It is exhausting.
Absolutely. I just love my kids. Just love my kids. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I think that, we talked off air about boundaries, setting boundaries being one of the big pieces to this. That sometimes there are boundaries your family needs. Sometimes there's boundaries you need. Sometimes you guys set a boundary where your kids don't realize it because there might be somebody who's not safe around. And we can talk about that more in a second. But I think about specifically the family dynamics, there's less choice of who's around. You kind of have who you have at holidays and whatever else. And so I don't know if you guys have thoughts of how you approached holidays or family get-togethers where you knew, oh man, everybody's got the one uncle or one aunt. You're like, I just need them to, maybe they'll get sick and not come and whatever. Not in our family, of course. If you're an aunt or uncle listening to this right now,
totally never. No,
all of you.
It's not for either one of our families. Right. Other people's families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say that everybody kind of has those people around them. They're like, we gotta just, help make sure there's a good boundary there. How did you guys think about that when you were beginning to walk this journey?
You want to go, Mo? What's on your mind?
I mean, I don't want to say. I'll say this. I feel like there were some missteps early. There was, and the missteps were more in we were trying to figure out ourselves. We were trying to figure out parenting style, our kids. There's that pressure from not spoken pressure, but your parents, your older siblings or whatever have, they've been there, done that. They know how to raise the kids, and you're just, you've got these little ones and you're trying to, there's just a lot of pressure that quote, your kids are going to perform appropriately in front of the family, right? And holidays are just heightened because there's a lot and all the things, heightened emotions during those times. And so, I think I can look back on some hard conversations and some things that we had to have along the way. And, I'm grateful for family that was willing to say, to be teachable or to be open to, I still remember my mom one time saying, man, I wish you would have told me that earlier, brought me up to speed earlier. And so,
because her heart was that she could have been more supportive.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, so in that regard, family has been, immediate family, or meaning just grandparents and aunts, uncles have been, supportive and open. But, at the same time, realizing that they have their own story, realizing that we don't live in the same city. And so the times we're with them is not, it's not a daily thing or weekly thing. It's a couple of times a year. So even, just helping those 2 to 3 times a year, it's setting expectations. It's thinking through, like when we lived away, since we live away from family, it was always like, oh, it's summer or it's Christmas. We've got to go for a whole week and we're going to be gone 7 days, and realizing, I can tell you, we have our magic number, and it's 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
Not right.
Days. You mean to be gone?
Yeah. Days. Yeah. Days. And that's part of what our kiddos, how they just, they're at their best. And so let's have if the sweetness can be with family for 3 days, then let's not push it to 4 or 6 or whatever we're going to do. So I think it's just learning our family. It's learning how to set our kids up for success. There's a lot of expectations when you roll in out of town. And for us, we just needed to think through sleeping, traveling. We didn't pile everybody in one car and have, a long drive, and everybody was already at wit's end by the time they got there. It was like we did our best to set up, we have 2 cars going, and that was an extra expense, but it was worth it to us. And to think through sleeping arrangements and what's going to be best for us. And, all the things. Our goal as parents were to do our part on setting the environment to be successful. Mm-hmm. Along the way, not all at one time. We didn't come in and say, all right, we're going to do a 2-day seminar so y'all can understand ETC and TBRI, and let's talk about the brain, and let's talk about co-regulation. And we didn't do that. It's been gradually with the education piece. And then, also just as our kids have gotten older, just talking with them about, hey, we do things a little differently in our house than there, but we can flex, and we can, our kids need to flex a muscle and learn some things too. So all that, just learning and doing our best. And some days we do it good, and some days we just fall in bed and crash because we didn't.
What I hear you say, what I think is insightful, is you're basically saying you're advocating for them, both their emotional and relational needs. So our goal is to set those relationships up for success. So we want our children to have a close relationship to the best of everybody's ability, and that's important, to the best of everybody's ability. Maybe not what we expected, but everybody's doing the best they can. So we're going to advocate for the relationship, but we can't forget that advocating includes like an environmental piece, Mo. Like you said it, and I think it's worth just making sure we put like a pin in it and understand that advocacy includes setting them up for success in their environment, in the circumstances and situation. So what we're doing is advocating for that relationship and interaction with family by being very thoughtful about the whole child's experience along that long trip or journey. So, and maybe even modeling to family that those things have to be in place for our children to be able to show up well at the Thanksgiving table or whatever it might be. So feeling, you said like we messed up a lot at the beginning, and I think it's because we were feeling insecure and we didn't feel strong enough. And to your point, JD, I love where you said, like, don't over apologize, like just support the child. We hadn't figured that out yet. And I think it takes every parent a little while to figure that out.
Right.
I don't think any of us start our parenting feeling super secure and strong. I don't think we know our path forward. I think that we're figuring out who we are as parents and what our family is. And so in those early stages, it's okay to like fumble your way through.
Yeah.
Just grow in your ability to advocate for their best and figure out, why in the world is that hard for you? Why is it hard? Why is it embarrassing? But maybe why do we need our parents to think we're good parents? Or why? Like, what's happening in us?
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I think that is an important disclaimer in this, is that nobody starts off like listening to this and being like, oh, just don't be embarrassed or don't over apologize. Got it. And then that's just never a struggle. I mean, it's like we're human. Yes. And I think we want obviously to be good parents, and we want to be thought of as good parents. And sometimes the levels of those kind of can be in unhealthy places. Like sometimes we put in a way too high of a premium on, I've got to be a good parent. And it turns into a performance-based thing, a performance-based type of connected parenting, which is funny, but
that's a real thing.
100%. And then there's other times where we put too much of an onus on what people think about us. And I think all of us have separately shared stories of like somebody losing it in Target and it either causing us to lose it also, or, moments we're proud of that, response. But it always involves somebody looking at you sideways, or you can just feel eyes burning through the back of your head. And so there's a thick skin that develops over time with remembering that, like, we got to get our kids what they need. And when we do, there's growth there, there's connection, there's trust, there's relationship. And eventually where those things exist, there tend to be less of the moments that cause the blowups in Target. they're not eradicated. Sorry, don't lose hope, but there's less of them, and there's more safety for you guys when there's an express need. You recognize it quicker and can tend to it. So, it is not an instant. Don't get embarrassed. Don't feel shame. Card that is
That's not what's happening in the reality of that. Again, especially with family. I mean, I think it's still there with friends, but especially with family. Figure out what's boiling up in me, and like what level of comfort do I need to find in my own skin. And like, I can say my own skin needed to feel comfortable being misunderstood. Like, I needed to figure out how to be at home being misunderstood. Yeah. Because if I'm misunderstood, I can be present with my kid because I'm not worried about what anybody else thinks about what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Yeah. And if my need to be respected or understood or whatever trumped me, then I wasn't present. And I love that's why you started this whole thing and you gave us an example of being in the moment with the kid, because that's actually where it happens. You advocate in the moment and then you sort of advocate outside the moment. But even in doing that, you're trying to prepare for the next interaction to be one where you can be present and people can grow in their love and care for your children. Like, we want the people in our life to cherish our kids. Yep. We want our kids to be cherished and celebrated and seen and valued and respected as human beings. And if we are always apologizing for their behavior, that's going to do the opposite of that, actually.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, I think it's interesting you say that, Tona, because, we were at school today for our kids and we were with some other parents and you said it, you were emotional today because you were so happy for the other kids and what was happening, and that's what
one of them said, Tona, you're up in your feels. I'm like, I am. I'm proud of our babies. Like,
and she responded, we love our babies. Like, we love our, we love our kiddos. And that's exactly what we want. But, going back, Tona, I look at where we are now, having young adult kids, and obviously we have some littles too, but I go back to those lonely years. I mean, when you talk about being misunderstood, and I still remember being at the park. I remember vividly being at the park with multiple families and how we handled situation, and just you could hear comments from other families like, "Ooh, we wouldn't do that. And that's not how we're going to handle it." And I just also want to just encourage families, parents of some of y'all are in places right now that are deeply lonely, that we're trying to make decisions.
Yep.
That's the best thing for your child. And that's really hard. And I don't want to fly over that. I don't want it to be a one-liner. It was lonely. It was absolutely.
And not lonely for like a week. It was lonely for like years.
Yeah. It was lonely. And so I can't, I think it's what's driven us into the work we do, and why we're letting folks to have resources and all the things available to them, and community and all of that, because man, it can be lonely, and it can be hard, and you're going to be misunderstood. But I look back now and I think about the story I'm thinking about in that park, and how you were so deeply misunderstood and judged. And then I fast forward now some 18, 19, 20 years, and I look at your relationship, tearing up, with our children. And that relationship was forged in a park over and over again, as there were those around us that oftentimes stood in judgment of the decisions we were making. And so I just want to encourage those that are being misunderstood, that are making the decisions that are hard. And I just want to say, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there's going to be some sweet loves that are with you. And because right now you're making the decision to stand with them and be their advocate. Yeah, being their advocate. And so advocate on, and
Mo, I appreciate you sharing the tenderness of that. When you were sharing that story, when you first brought it up, it's interesting you worked your way there, because I thought, do we even talk to any of those people anymore? How long has it been since I've seen some of them?
Right.
And I'm immediately back in that park. I know exactly the situation you're talking about. We had many, but I know where your emotion's coming in. Yep. And I don't think those people are around anymore, but you know who is still around? Yep. The kiddo that needed mom and dad in that minute. Like they're still up in here, and I don't know where those people are. Yep. But thinking about the friendship side, it was probably about a year ago, one of our older kids sort of did hey, Mom, where did so-and-so go? And it was a family that had been around our circle a good bit when they were younger. And they're like, where did they go? Like, why, what happened there? Why aren't you still in a relationship? And I was able to say, hon, I think Dad and I just knew in our heart of hearts they couldn't go with us where our family was headed. And we started putting up some boundaries, and we put those boundaries up to protect you. And it was the child that we really did that for. Mm-hmm. And they're a young adult, and they got teary and emotional and gave us the biggest hug and just said, thanks for protecting me. Golly. And I'm like, that's it, y'all. They asked, where's so-and-so been all these years? And I'm like, all these years ago, our intuition was, they're not going to be able to do this with us. And it's better now to put up a little boundary. And we just need to be able to be present. So if there's room to grow, please help the people along. If your intuition says they're not teachable, they're not there's no movement here. I mean, there is a proverb that says, don't throw your pearls before swine. And don't throw your pearls before swine, especially when they're your children. No. Full stop, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. Well, my last note on that would just be, this doesn't mean that you have to now relegate yourself to only hang out with ETC trained TBR practitioners. That's right. Who are in the moment with their kids all the time, and you're all fighting the good fight together. Nope. Some of our closest friends are not in the same page parenting, or they're just walking a different path than we are, and they make space for us, make space for them.
That's
we
right, JD.
Talk about it when we can, or when it's brought up. But it's the same as any different situation where you might have a slightly different path in life. They send their kids to private school, we send ours to public school. Well, okay, and we can still be friends, right? So I think it's more about the demeanor of the relationship and whether or not it's able to have some grace and some
mutual respect. I think it's about respect.
There, some empathy there, where both of you can be there for each other. I think that's as important as anything that we've said today in identifying this can be a relationship that can grow in this way, or we got to put up some boundaries. And I think that'd be my advice is don't think this means that you now have to go figure out where the practitioners are in your city, and that's now your only friends.
Yep.
So,
although if nobody around is respectful and safe, it's okay to also be lonely and cultivate new places and spaces. But I think it's both and. I just don't think it's either or. I think it would be really nice if it was linear and black and white and gray, and it's not. It's messy and both anding. Some can grow, some can stay neutral, and some may have to have a boundary in both relationships. I mean, friendships and family. So, yeah.
For sure. Well, guys, thank y'all. This is great. Yeah. Well, thanks again to Mo and Tona for coming on. Thanks to you guys for putting up with my raspy voice today. We will be back next week with more exciting new content, just a last reminder on both of the announcements we made before the show for both the Equip Parent Coaching and for our event that's coming up November 12th. I cannot announce the details of the event publicly, so I do need you to click that link if you're interested. Don't necessarily reach out to me individually. You can click the link that is in our bio or link that's in the show notes. It will explain everything about the event that's coming up that you don't want to miss. I'll just keep saying that until the event comes. November 12th, click the link. And if you are interested in being a part of our last round of beta testing for the Equip Parent Coaching courses, email equip@empoweredtoconnect.org to express your interest, mention the podcast, and get 25% off the cost of the course. It's 10 weeks. It's awesome. It's only 15 spots left. Please be in that 15. And please click the link and come see us in November in Memphis. All right, that's all for me today. For Kyle Wright, who edits and engineers this rambling audio, for Tad Jewett, who's the creator of the music behind the Empowered to Connect, and everybody here at ETC, I'm JD Wilson, and we will see you next week on the Empowered to Connect podcast.